Urgent message to subscribers. Hey everyone, this channel is still online, but many others are being taken down across YouTube. If that happens here and you want to keep following the reports and revelations, I'll be reactivating my channel on Rumble, under the same name, Geopolitics Update, same colors, same style. Thanks for your continued support. And remember, the revelations aren't held by governments. Since ancient times, beings have always contacted specific groups of people on Earth. Just look at the history of humanity. Infrastructure collapse and the New Silent War, 2025 report. Welcome to the Geopolitics Update channel. Monday, November 10, 2025. The Russia-Ukraine war remains active in 2025 and continues to reshape global power dynamics, with NATO, China, and regional actors adjusting their positions amid rising tensions and covert operations. Intercepted intelligence reports describe the Russia-Ukraine conflict as the epicenter of a silent storm reshaping Europe's geopolitical chessboard. Russia is consolidating control in eastern Ukraine and expanding its military presence near NATO borders, prompting Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states to deepen cooperation with the United States. These efforts include undisclosed arms transfers and logistical reinforcements. Belarus functions as a logistical corridor under Moscow's indirect command, while Moldova is flagged in risk projections as vulnerable to internal destabilization due to mounting energy and political pressure. In Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan are navigating a delicate balance between Russian and Chinese influence. China is advancing infrastructure projects under its Belt and Road Initiative, while Russia seeks to maintain its historical foothold. Turkmenistan's vast natural gas reserves have made it a focal point of commercial and diplomatic competition involving Europe, Russia, and China. In the Caucasus, tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan remain unresolved. Turkey supports Azerbaijan through unconventional operations, while Russia maintains a military presence in Armenia, creating a strategic deadlock over energy and territorial interests. In the Middle East, Israel has intensified military operations in Gaza and the West Bank, while boosting surveillance along its borders with Lebanon and Syria. The conflict with Iran escalates, especially following attacks linked to Tehran-backed groups. Iran has increased its naval presence in the Persian Gulf and is seeking alternative trade routes with China, Russia, and India to bypass sanctions. Saudi Arabia and the UAE continue internal modernization and military cooperation with the US, while also negotiating economic deals with Asian powers. The Iranian rivalry remains central to Gulf politics, according to military sources. In North Africa, Libya remains unstable, with rival factions vying for territorial control. Egypt is reinforcing its military presence in Sinai amid economic and social pressures. Algeria and Morocco maintain diplomatic tensions over Western Sahara, a dispute that reportedly involves hidden interests from external powers. The Indo-Pacific region has become the primary stage for global hegemonic competition between the US and China. Elite military exercises describe the Taiwan situation as latent and scalable. China conducts regular drills near the island, while the US maintains diplomatic and military support for Taipei, including arms shipments and naval patrols in the strait. Japan and South Korea are strengthening their defense capabilities and aligning with Washington on regional containment strategies. Australia, through the AUKUS Pact, is deepening military and tech cooperation with the UK and US, including nuclear submarine development. China is accelerating its push for technological self-sufficiency, investing heavily in semiconductors, AI, and digital infrastructure. It is also expanding its presence in the South China Sea by building military bases on artificial islands, challenging international trade routes. India seeks a strategic balance between Western cooperation and autonomy. Behavioral analyses position it as a silent pivot between global blocs, with border tensions with China continuing through sporadic skirmishes in the Himalayas. Southeast Asia, led by Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, faces pressure to pick sides. Discrete diplomatic meetings suggest that economic stability and regional sovereignty are being negotiated under multiple layers of influence. Intelligence reports tied to diplomatic missions describe Latin America as a region undergoing institutional transition and geoeconomic pressure. In 2025, multiple countries are simultaneously grappling with persistent inflation, deep social polarization, and competing foreign influence. Brazil, according to strategic sources, maintains regional leadership, focusing on multilateral agreements and energy transition. But internally, the country is caught in a cycle of power tensions, high-impact investigations, and debates over technological sovereignty, a theater of control where not all actors are visible. Venezuela, still under sanctions, is seeking closer ties with Asian powers. Military sources suggest that the presence of Russian and Chinese units in strategic areas is more than symbolic. Mexico, meanwhile, is reinforcing its role as a bridge between Latin America and the United States, but faces internal challenges tied to violence, corruption, and digital governance. Behavioral analyses position the country as a potential epicenter of institutional reconfiguration. Argentina, based on data from strategic simulation platforms, is dealing with the prolonged economic crisis and debt renegotiations. Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador are experiencing cycles of institutional instability, with protests and government changes that, according to diplomatic sources, may not be as spontaneous as they appear. China and Russia are expanding their presence in the region through investments in infrastructure, energy, and technology. The United States is responding with cooperation packages and diplomatic reinforcement, aiming to curb the rise of parallel influence networks. In sub-Saharan Africa, reports highlight political instability, military coups, and armed conflict in countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Niger, Mali, and Sudan. The Sahel region, according to military sources, has become a critical zone, with the rise of extremist groups and growing foreign military presence. France is scaling back its involvement, while Russia and Turkey expand their influence through private contracts and logistical support. And then the curtain rises on something darker. China continues its strategy of investing in infrastructure, mining, and telecommunications. Angola, Zambia, and Ethiopia are receiving funding in exchange for access to strategic minerals like cobalt and lithium. The United States is attempting to regain ground through partnerships in health and food security, but faces resistance in areas where its presence has historically been limited. Western Europe is undergoing institutional restructuring. Germany, France, Italy, and Spain are still dealing with the long-term effects of the energy crisis that began in 2022. Germany is accelerating its transition to renewable sources but faces logistical bottlenecks. France is investing in nuclear energy and artificial intelligence applied to public governance, which, according to analysts, may signal the emergence of a synthetic government model. The European Union is implementing institutional digitalization policies, including digital identity and central bank digital currencies. Technical sources indicate the bloc is strengthening its cyber defense, focusing on hybrid attacks and critical infrastructure protection. Trust in traditional institutions is declining, with the rise of populist movements and protests over inflation, energy security, and digital freedom. In the United States, sources report that political polarization has reached critical levels. Disputes between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches center on immigration, digital security, and AI regulation. The economy shows signs of recovery, driven by technological innovation and reindustrialization, but social inequality and racial tensions remain flashpoints. In foreign policy, the US is reinforcing alliances with Europe, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and India to counter Chinese and Russian influence. Canada maintains institutional stability and multilateral cooperation, focusing on environmental policy, human rights, and innovation. As a bloc, North America faces challenges in cybersecurity, digital platform regulation, and energy transition. The global dynamic points to a fragmentation of the international order. The race for artificial intelligence is intensifying, with the US, China, and the EU competing over regulatory standards and algorithmic control. Extreme climate events are disrupting supply chains and triggering migration flows. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure are becoming routine. Hybrid warfare is no longer a theory, it's the new normal. Organizations like the UN, IMF, and WTO are facing growing skepticism over their effectiveness. New blocs are emerging with alternative proposals, such as BRICS and regional forums for digital governance. The outlook for the coming years includes three possible scenarios: unstable multipolarity, algorithmic warfare, and climate-driven collapse with social reconfiguration. In documents circulating among sectors where power has no face, the battle over critical infrastructure is described as the new silent frontline. Power grids, telecom systems, data platforms, and logistics corridors are no longer just operational assets, they've become vectors of institutional control. According to technical sources tied to energy security councils, Europe is facing strain from accelerated digitalization, the electrification of vehicle fleets, and surging demand from data centers. Germany and the Netherlands have reported electrical instability in key industrial zones. France, in internal reports, is debating the expansion of its nuclear program as a response to grid pressure. And then, in the United States, the infrastructure debate is heating up. Intelligence records linked to Congress reveal disputes over funding, regulation, and cybersecurity, exposing that private corporations control critical sectors with minimal public oversight. The systemic vulnerability is described as a downward spiral, where algorithms, shareholders, and invisible networks dictate national priorities. In Asia, China is advancing with integrated logistics corridors and digital platforms. Military sources report that port, railways, and data networks are being woven into a regional web of influence. India is responding with resilient infrastructure and strategic partnerships with Japan and Australia, but still faces internal bottlenecks and geopolitical pressure. Behavioral analysis shows a growing presence of transnational influence networks. Foundations, academic consortia, and funding platforms operate across multiple countries with converging agendas in education, public health, digital governance, and civil rights. In records held by councils operating above the institutional surface, these entities are described as a parallel government, financing protests, political manipulation, and institutional control through opaque fiscal sponsorship. The silent institutional transition is unfolding through the adoption of administrative technologies, automated decision systems, and the integration of digital platforms into state apparatuses. digital identity, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and public management algorithms are becoming tools of governance. Operational diagnostics from tactical analysis systems classify the impact on civil rights, privacy, and political autonomy as critical level. The fragmentation of the global order isn't just happening through armed conflict or territorial disputes. It's manifesting in structural shifts in the mechanisms of control, influence, and decision-making. Critical infrastructure, once invisible to public debate, has become the stage for silent struggles that shape the future of nations. They know the public isn't watching. What was once visible has become noise. What was once noise now sets the rules. Nations no longer compete just for territory, they compete for algorithms, narratives, and invisible networks. Infrastructure has become a trench. Identity, a currency. Truth, a protocol. While the public debates scandals and headlines, the blocks move in silence. The war isn't declared. It's encoded. And at the center of this board, there are no winners, only operators. They don't appear in photos. They don't give speeches. They don't run for office. But they're there. This is exactly how the political class plays us. End of the report, folks. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the conversation in the comments. If you'd like to support us directly, consider making a donation using the link in the description or the QR code on screen. Your contribution helps us work better, and keeps this project alive and independent. Thank you so much. And see you in the next report. This content is a narrative adaptation based on public topics of global geopolitics. The version presented has been transformed with an original style, drawing on public information, analyses, and opinions, and its sole purpose is to inform and entertain.